Are we on, George? Good evening, folks. Good evening and welcome. It's Thursday evening, it's 8 o'clock. So, you know what happens at that time. Happiest place in radio. And George must be a very happy man this evening. He is the only rooster in the hen house. Can you?
Oh my God. Never
Look at him
fails.
blush. He's blushing. Oh my God.
And
Beverley,
look at him. Look at him blushing.
Beverley,
Hi, George.
if you've been listening to my morning program, you know I have a problem with a bunch of roosters in my yard here. You've been here, so you know what I'm talking about. These roosters, these roosters have absolutely no regard for the noise that their hens make when they attack,
Oh,
and it's a
oh,
nuisance. And now you're calling me a
yeah.
rooster. Well, thank you very much. I love you too, Bev. By the way, girl,
Well,
I see a face there this tonight. I think I recognize the face and the smile. But is it who I think it is?
oh,
George, I came back just so I could see you.
Oh, yes,
oh,
yes, yes, yes.
More
That
blush
that
again.
that and a cup of coffee will get you all my love, Janet.
great.
I've missed you guys.
Yeah, we miss you too. You have missed a lot of exciting
I
stuff.
know, I know, I know. I feel like I'm going backwards as a journalist because this group is probably one of the best things that could have ever happened to my life as a journalist. So I
Oh,
deserve a good beating.
thank you, thank
Yeah.
you. We're very happy because we do aim to be different. We
You
don't.
are different, and I've learned
Yeah,
so much from you. Yeah.
I tell you, tonight. Look, I don't know what's going on tonight. It's the first time in the 3 years of Mek We Chat. We don't see the men show up.
I know, right?
You know,
But I
I
got a gut I
can't.
got a gut feeling that the one from Dominica is going to be here because I saw him send a little suggestion a little while ago.
Yeah.
Yes, I expect him to be here. We don't see Dwyer. Suspect in chief. Well, he gallivanting all over the place. I
You
don't know if
know,
he's gonna turn
no
up.
behavior, no control, just
You
doing
know.
whatever he wants to do.
So here we are. But Janet, Margaret, and Catherine, we know that as long as the women are here, the show will go on.
Of
For sure.
course. Women rule every time.
Of course, it's what I always say. Women run things,
Of
but it's
course. Things
but
no
it's a
wrong with.
man's world.
We know that. We accept it and we love the fact that it's a man's world.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You
And
know
we're
what?
not trying to change that
You know
No,
what it
because
is,
no,
at the
Bev?
no,
end of
no.
the day, we
Bev,
run things.
Bev.
Yes, George.
I just think them other guys feel they can't keep up with this rooster.
Oh my God. That's right. Oh my God.
Oh gosh, so they have all
Oh
background
my.
shit. I could
It's
tell
either
you.
that or for some reason they're afraid to take on Janet tonight. Long time we didn't see
I
Janet.
think they knew I was coming,
Yeah.
George. And they know that
Yeah.
I come specifically for you. I don't wrong them. They knew you would get all the attention.
So they're gone. I I would just call them cowards. Let them
Exactly. I'm
run.
with you on that.
Bunch of cowards.
By
But
the
I tell
way,
you,
Wayne Francis and Donna Joseph are listening to what you guys are saying, so you better be careful.
It's
See,
all good, guys. It's
Mr.
all good
Mr.
fun. It's
Francis
all good
already
fun.
making fun of you all talking about a big rooster in the hen house. So so you all better watch it.
yes, that's all
Oh
right.
my God.
We hens are happy. You see,
So how is Grenada?
Grenada is still one of the most beautiful places in the Caribbean.
Absolutely.
You know, and I think the Grenada Tourism Authority does what it can to keep Grenada out there in everybody's face, you know?
Listen, I'm bombarded every week with a lot of information out of Grenada. I can tell you that. From the
Right.
chosen people, that is.
Exactly, you know. And Grenada just won another gold at the Chelsea Flower Show. Grenada
Wow.
religiously participates in that every year, and this is the 15th consecutive year that Grenada's display has been awarded gold. And
Yeah.
here, George, look at the man turn up to spoil your showing.
Listen, not only has he turned up, have you noticed? Have you? Oh, please, please, please. He came
No?
on there with his face perfectly centered in the frame tonight.
Yes. Yeah, but he moved the camera a little bit.
I
It
know
was
he
a
has
little bit
moved it.
before. Yeah.
Mr. Martin,
Welcome,
sir.
Afi. Very happy to see you. Is he hearing us? Yeah,
Yes,
yes.
Yes.
he's
Smile.
smiling.
Good. You know, for a moment there, George was celebrating. You know, he was the only rooster in the
Rooster.
house.
I almost said something else. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
me too. You know, the only rooster in the hen house. But now you get a little competition.
The question is he a crowing rooster? Is he still a crowing rooster?
From what he said before, I don't think he like when the rooster make all that noise. You see?
If you see the rooster run
1616 chicken chasing him all
Yes.
around the corner.
Welcome, Afi. Yes, I was just telling Janet that Grenada hopped its 15th consecutive gold at the Chelsea Flower Show, and that it's a proud moment for the country. Small, under-resourced, and have some people who don't manage the resources properly. So every achievement has to be celebrated, you know? We have a prime minister here who just lambasted his legal affairs department because the government apparently owes over $40 million in lawsuits to be paid. And the prime minister says it's because of all the bad advice he's gotten from his attorneys general over the years. That's why they lose so many cases.
Oh my God.
Yeah, well, one of the former attorneys general fired back at him, you know, Atherton Hood. Tell him to have a little decency and a little integrity because he has been given good advice over the years, but his bad behavior, why the country lose a lot of So it's not bad advice, it's bad behavior.
Oh
Never a
my
dull moment, I
God.
tell you. Never
You
a
know,
dull
but
moment.
I just thought that was I get really, really annoyed to the third degree when these politicians come out and talk like that. You have had so many attorneys general over the years. You've lost cases with every single attorney general. You don't pay when you lose. And now that you have a $40 million bill steering you down and more to come, you want to blame all of your former attorneys general. So the one who is sitting there now, the kind of burden that you are putting on his shoulder, you know, these politicians, they do not have brain between their ears, you know. They don't think, they just open their mouth and talk.
Be careful.
Listen,
Brains between the ears.
yes, you know, and again, I was going to say it another way, but that is a very careful way of putting it. They just don't think. The one in Antigua who calls himself the top dog, boy,
You know, I sort of like that one, though. You know.
you like him, the top dog.
Listen, I'm not afraid of anybody.
What you like about him, Janet?
That man is not afraid. I like leaders that are not afraid to speak their mind and are not afraid of, for instance, investors then. For instance, we have some issues in Jamaica right now where we're told that we should not speak about certain investors because they will want to pull out of the country. So if we even see anything going wrong, we're not to speak about it. I have an issue with that. Because if an investor is doing the wrong thing, even if that person has invested millions of dollars, they shouldn't be allowed to have carte blanche. They should not be able to just come into the country and do just about anything. Or be given anything because they are investing, right? People's rights remain.
I agree with that. We have one minister of government here in Grenada. When the Chinese were criticized for something they did here, her response was that you shouldn't bite the hand that feed you. But through programs like Mek We Chat, wrongdoing will be highlighted, and that is our mission.
Hands will be bitten.
Yes, we will bite hands, and we will not be hungry.
Because, you know, we have a politician here in Dominica who also considers himself a top dog. It's interesting that every time they want to say something good about themselves, they compare themselves to dogs.
The dogs?
George, yes, when I
Yes, and this one here calls himself a Rottweiler.
Oh.
He's fearless. He's afraid of no one. Just like Gaston Brown.
yeah,
Oh,
To you.
yeah.
well, let me.
But we don't want dogs to run our country, do we?
No, we don't.
We don't want that. So you know, if you're going to be a dog, at least say you're a collie.
What?
A collie.
Molly.
In other words, I mean, it's not just about not being afraid. A fool is not afraid of danger because a fool does not recognize danger.
You have a point there. You have a point there.
So we need leadership that, yes, is not fearless, but has a capacity actually to bring people into the picture.
That's true. You have to be a diplomatic. Diplomacy is important. I agree with you.
But local diplomacy, meaning engage with your people
Yeah.
first before you engage and spend time with people in New York and Washington and Brussels and London and Leningrad. Engage your people.
And what I said about
They're not doing.
what I said about politicians not thinking, the top dog in Antigua is a classic case. He just opens his mouth like a burst pipe, and it's diarrhea. He says things that are unsubstantiated. He says things while you say that, you know, you have to take a stand against investors doing wrong, and I fully 100% support that. But he attacks investors. You know, look at all that has happened with him and Sandals Resorts.
Right. And I wasn't speaking about Sandals earlier. I was thinking about he and the banks and what Scotia Bank has done and how he has dealt, how he's dealing with that. So I wasn't speaking about the Sandals story, to be honest.
Scotia Bank hasn't done anything. Republic Bank has bought Scotia Bank.
I know, but I think he was saying.
That's the short of it. He got upset because Republic Bank didn't ask him if they can buy Scotia Bank.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if when people doing business, they need permission to buy and sell whatever companies they want to buy and sell. It happens every day.
But I understand exactly what this beef is. He's trying to protect the interests of his people. I cannot kill him for that, Beverly. I can't.
It's not a matter of killing him, though. It's a matter of, we have, all of our governments have ministries of finance. And the ministries of finance have oversight over any financial institution operating in the country.
Right.
They're supposed to be in dialogue, ongoing dialogue with these institutions. In the Eastern Caribbean, we have, in addition, an Eastern Caribbean central bank. You in Jamaica have a national central bank.
Right, Bank of Jamaica.
And the question that arises is not whether or not, the Prime Minister, did the right thing after the sale was announced.
Mm-hmm.
The question that arises in our mind should be, what kind of oversight was going on? Did the Ministry of Finance have any indication at all that a major private bank like Scotia was considering moving out of the jurisdiction by selling? And if so, what kinds of discussions were entertained between the government and the bank so that the interests of the customers of that bank would be looked after, not after the fact, but before the fact?
But you know what some of these deals behind the closed doors are. We all know this.
But
And I'm thinking that deal was made behind closed doors, and that the government was caught off guard, including the Ministry of Finance.
That's my point. That's my point. But we have significantly well-trained professionals in our banking, in our financial ministries throughout the region. And we have even better trained professionals at the level of our central bank. And is it not the function of these institutions to sort of keep track of things and don't tell us about the rain going to fall after the rain has started falling?
After the flood.
So I am just saying, maybe, it's time for us to be more rigorous in our expectations of persons who are in positions of governance, so that they don't feel, oh, well, it happened already, so they put on a show to kind of indicate to us that, oh, they're really championing our interests. But you should have been 24/7 looking up. That's our money in those banks,
Yeah. And that's exactly why Pico collapsed. That is exactly why Pico, those multi-million-dollar institutions, were left to just collapse and people lose all the money because of poor oversight and poor regulations.
You have a point. I can't even argue with you on that point, as it relates to that, to be honest with you, because you have a point.
Right.
Yeah,
So
you have a point.
So while he may come out swinging and saying stuff, when he's going to say he's not going to sign the vesting order for the sale to be finalized, the banks have options too,
But they don't need him to do that.
Exactly.
They can do it without him.
You see, they have options. So the way he does things and the things he says leaves a lot to be desired. You see? Leaves a lot to be desired.
Yeah, you can say it differently. There's room for improvement.
So I don't know. Some things you can't improve on.
Artie. Artie. Speaking about room for improvement.
Right.
Could you put your head a little higher up in the frame, please?
No, put my head higher up. I'm a humble guy. I don't walk with my head higher up.
Okay,
What's
then.
the matter?
Okay then. I tell you what.
Is that better?
Yeah,
All right,
that's better.
I have to be eating while we're going on.
That's all right.
I think
This
what's
is
also
good,
interesting is that the one who usually comes on this program, is not eating tonight. You're the one eating.
I know she's watching me though.
Yeah.
Watching me, I can see her. I will not be surprised when she gets up and goes to the kitchen. I'm sitting in the kitchen, so the food is within reach.
And any minute now, you'll see his wife going back and forth. And by the way, it's almost time for me to go get my first cup of coffee. So
I know.
Ah, wow.
And your cashew nuts.
my who's nuts? My who nuts?
Look,
My
folks,
cashew nuts?
gone 20 minutes already, and we have not yet touched the menu.
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
Lord, I'm so sorry. I was the one, I'm to be blamed.
Yeah.
No.
That's okay.
No,
This is all good.
there is no blame.
You know,
Spontaneity is
talking about blaming Janet, I have to bring this up. Janet, the last few times you were with us, you have this habit of sitting there. Watch this.
These cameras?
Yeah. She is
Where?
always playing with her hair. You.
Oh, listen to me. I am about to plait my hair. And then I remember that I'm here. But I need to plait my hair. Okay.
Janet, you didn't know you were on camera.
No,
I
this
don't have any
I
ear
might
to
as
flat.
well do it.
Artie,
Because I'm addicted
eat
to
your heart
it.
out, Artie.
and all the time I say I wish I could plait mine.
Well, you can try plaiting mine.
Yeah.
I see you have some police officers over there in Dominica. I do not want to do anything that looks like that can be interpreted in any way as assault. Because if I try to plait that hair and blood start to run, next thing I know, I see a coaster bus pull up with the SSU coming for me.
I know. What's going on, Athy?
But Afi,
Well,
George wants to run the clip, and Afi going to tell us what's going on there with that bus and a half full of police officers that we saw.
and what you saw was not all. I mean, there were two other buses full.
Really?
Yeah.
All right, let's have a look at it, George, and then. Oh, this is what happens. We're not going to see it.
The fellas have arrived. This is supposed to be an electoral process. The fellas have arrived. The fellas have arrived. You just have to take your footage of it, partner.
Yeah, I know.
The fellas have arrived. The fellas have arrived. You have to take that. You have to take that. You have to take it. This is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. The boys have arrived. The boys have arrived. The boys have arrived. An electoral meeting, after all. This is how we come. This is how we come, boy. Where, boy? That's not right. That is 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 not right, my brother. That cannot be right. That cannot be right.
I can't believe it, man.
All right, guys. Artie, take it away and tell us what we were just looking at.
Yes. So Afi, what was the purpose of that huge deployment of police officers?
Essentially, in a word, it's the weaponization of democracy and elections in Dominica.
No.
The event, which precipitated the presence of the soldiers, and we're calling them soldiers now because they're no longer policemen. It was a panel discussion convened by the chairman of the Electoral Commission to discuss the future of the electoral process in Dominica. And the panelists included himself as chairman of the commission, democracy and elections, and representatives of the government or ruling party, which interestingly were two unelected officials, the the Attorney General, who is a hired person, a public servant, and the Foreign Minister, who's a non-elected senator in our parliament, and two representatives from the opposition, the leader of the opposition, Lennox Linton, and a senator from the parliament on the opposition side. And the idea behind it, apparently, according to the announcement by the chairman of the Electoral Commission, the idea was to have a sober discussion about the future of electoral process in Dominica. Now you have to understand, if you rewind to 2009, the election of 2009 was when the issue of free and fair elections was first raised vigorously by two observer teams, one from the Commonwealth and one from the OAS. They said the elections were fair, but they were not necessarily, were free, but they weren't necessarily fair. And they listed all the reasons for that conclusion. The monopolization of state radio and state broadcast institutions by the ruling party, and the refusal of the state-owned station to accept political advertisements from the opposition party, even if these were paid for advertisements. The complete absence of any sort of reporting or control on the amount of money that could be spent and that was spent on the election, so that in fact at that time in the 2009 election, over $20 million, yes, million, was spent on a 3-week election campaign. In 2014, and that was by one party, of course, by the ruling party. In 2014, you had a repeat of the same situation where the Commonwealth Secretariat and the OAS came in again. Actually, CARICOM also had an observer mission, but it's interesting. The CARICOM observer mission gave no indication about the absence of fairness, even if the same evidence that was reviewed by the Commonwealth Secretariat team and the OAS team was available to the CARICOM team. But the CARICOM people said nothing about it. Recommendations included then that we needed to have voter identification cards, because Dominica still today remains the only one in the Caribbean that operates elections without a voter identification card. So I can present myself to a polling station and say, my name is George Grant, I am here to vote. They check the list, George Grant, okay, here's your thing, go and vote.
No ID?
No ID is required or requested.
Nope.
So anybody can turn up anywhere and vote, as long as the name you claim to have is on that list. And massive fraud was, evident and possible based on that alone. People were voting in many different constituencies, for example. Okay? So the other issue was, in 2014, when the last voters registry came out, that was the list of voters before the election in 2014, the numbers on that list ended up being equivalent to the total population. You understand what I'm saying? And that was because people who had died in the interim, their names were still on the list. People who had left the country and were out of the country for more than 5 years, in some cases 20, 30, 40 years, their names were still on the list. And so a recommendation from the observers was, you've got to cleanse the lists. The law requires that on an ongoing basis, there's a revision of lists, to cleanse it, to make sure it's accurately representative of the voters, the registered voters. That has not been done for the last, since 2000. It has not been done. So we are operating without ID cards. We're operating without a cleansed list. In fact, the list today has more names on it than the total resident population in Dominica. The voters list is larger than the population of the country. And what has one of the implications of that is that a lot of those people should have been cleansed from the list because they're now living elsewhere. And the law says if you're living outside of the country for more than 5 years, it means you're showing no real interest and your name should be removed. If you want to get your name back on the list, you need to re-register. But what has been happening is that those names still on the list, the ruling party uses state funds to go out there and organize groups of resident Dominicans living overseas in New York, in Boston, in Toronto, in Montreal, in Miami, wherever. And they give them airline tickets to come into Dominica to vote.
Wow.
In defiance of the law. The same thing happens with Dominicans who have left and are living in the US Virgin Islands, or the British Virgin Islands, or in Antigua, or in Guadeloupe, or Trinidad, or wherever it is. They bring them in to vote. Sometimes people coming in the morning, they vote, and they leave in the afternoon. They are not resident, they pay no taxes here, they have no assets, rarely here, operating assets and so forth. So for all intents and purposes, they are no longer resident and hence no longer eligible to vote, according to the existing law. So the guy who is now chairman, who convened this panel discussion, which was attended by the soldiers as well, has been in that position since 2011. And he has religiously refused to implement the law as it is, which is, and to implement the recommendations of the observer groups, which is to get voter ID cards, cleanse the list, minimally do that. And so momentum has been building up, and a group of civil society, the churches, trade unions, farmers and youth and other people got together and they organized fora to highlight the incongruity of the situation. The pressure has been building. We are now due for another election. This guy who is our top dog and who has been prime minister for the last 14 years, 15 years, has announced, a couple of years ago he announced, he wants to remain in that position for 50 years.
Wow.
And until his son, who's a little toddler, becomes an adult and can become prime minister. He's announced that. So we are confronted with our own version of the Maduros and whoever the other kinds of persons who perceive themselves to be leaders forever.
Yeah.
And so the pressure is on right now for electoral reform. But in order to deflect the pressure, they've engaged and had the Electoral Commission, which has the right under the law to cleanse the list and to process and deliver ID cards. They've got the commission now engaged in dialogue. So he announces dialogue. He invites the population to a public dialogue in a place capable of seating 800 people. And when we go there, I arrived there at 4:45. The meeting was due to start at 6. I was confronted with closed gates. But on the inside, behind the gate, I could see policemen and a few civilians. An inspector comes to the gate and said, Ati, I'm sorry, but you're not going to be allowed in here because you were not invited. I said,
Wow.
invited?
Wow.
This is a public event. I don't need an invitation to go to a public event. I said, I'm sorry, you're not coming in here. And so we had words. This guy, you know, an inspector dressed as a soldier with his M16 on his side and his tear gas canisters on his side and whatnot, telling me that I can't go in there.
But,
And then
Ati, your police force is now the army?
yeah, they have de facto become the army, but not a national army. They are a partisan, a political army. They respond only to the wishes and the call of the ruling party. They have
this is happening. This look like it's about to happen right across the Caribbean.
well, I think the model is really what is emerging. It's being replicated throughout the region. And so, to cut a long story short, at that point, the soldiers arrived. One of them had a list. They never showed the list to anybody. They would just your name is not on the list. Out. So there were already some people inside of the hall. They put them out. They said, "You're not on the list. You're not on the list. Get out." And they assembled their soldiers around the hall on the inside of the compound. And then 2 other busloads of soldiers came and parked behind the people who were now trying to get into the place. So they sandwiched the public between soldiers on the inside and soldiers on the outside.
Outside.
And we have just received information today, because that army has been armed by China. And today we have received information that there are some tanks on their way to Dominica. So while we sit and enjoy our carnivals and our festivals, the weaponization of democracy and elections has occurred. And the model which is being set up in Dominica here for the English-speaking Caribbean will be spread, because that will be the model that will keep those top dogs
In power.
in the yard.
I always find it so scary and so frightening that you have these heavily armed soldiers swooping down on unarmed civilians.
Absolutely.
It happens all the time in Dominica.
Yeah. Remember?
I've seen it in St. Vincent.
Yeah.
They come out with heavy weaponry, usually where people are gathered, just like at that meeting. But if those in authority perceive that this meeting is something which could educate people about something that they should know, which would probably not be in their favor, they bring out the literal big guns to intimidate and to scare away.
But they weren't even scaring away. Like they had their own people there who were specifically invited.
And this was, just to clarify, Ari, this was supposed to be a public event. It was advertised as such.
It was. And the first we heard about invitations was when we got there. And frankly, I believe the list was not a list of invitees. It was a list of excludees.
Right.
Persons who they didn't want inside there. Because I saw many other social activists and persons who are whose public position is known on electoral reform and free and fair elections, and they were not allowed to get in.
And so here it is, your right to free assembly is infringed.
Right, a constitutional right.
Your constitutional right to assemble freely, to associate freely, those rights have just been trampled just like that by officers of the state who are paid with the same taxpayers' money
But it's, once again, they're fulfilling the role that, as I always say, that police and people like that have always fulfilled, which is ready to protect the interests of the ruling class.
Definitely. Yeah.
But there was a time in my own recollection and my lifetime where the police force actually was there to protect the people. There was a time when if police perceived that your rights were being abridged, that they would come to you and tell you, you have a right, sir. You have a right. That has happened to me personally and to many others. But today, these are goons. These are like the Mongoose gang. These are like the Tonton. These are, that's what you have. The weaponization. It's not even the militarization, because military talks about a certain discipline and a code of conduct. These guys have no codes. They have no discipline. They basically are the servants. They are the watchdogs and the guard dogs for the top dog.
For the top dog.
Well, you know what's scary? What is even more scary though, is the fact that they are being armed by China.
Well, we need to open our eyes. This is the same China that's going throughout the region handing out money.
Yeah.
Building roads and forts and this and that and the other.
Yeah.
And this is the same China which all minister here say, you can't bite the hand that feed you. You see?
Yeah. It's the same China that is taking over Jamaica.
Yeah.
I'm going to expect the weaponization. I am listening keenly to this because I expect the same to happen here.
But that is how China operates. China is a military state.
And you notice the president of China is always smiling?
Oh, yes.
Because he's not getting his hands dirty with that kind of things.
He's laughing at the rest of us. That's why I'm
operatives to do that dirty work for him. So let's be clear and let's be careful. And that's what's disturbing about our levels of leadership at the policy level, at the diplomatic level, because there are some bright people. If we're not anything else, we're bright. But we're so bright, we kind of blinding ourselves.
And we've gone way past our break time, so let's take a break and come back.
All right, we're going to get some sauce up.
I'm always on the move. Training, traveling, competing. So it's good to know I have Co-op Bank in the palm of my hand.
Introducing e-banking, one of many customer convenience services from Grenada Cooperative Bank, and there's more to come.
It's swift, simple, and secure.
Welcome home.
A natural disaster can change your life in minutes. Preparation is the best protection for your family and business. Prepare now. Create a disaster plan and make sure everyone knows what to do. Store water, non-perishable food, and medication. Remember basic emergency supplies such as batteries and flashlights. Trim overhanging trees. If trees near power lines are unsafe to trim, call GRENADA at 237 for assistance or advice. Install surge protectors to safeguard your electrical devices against outages and intermittent surges. For more information, visit grenlac.com.
GRENADA, energizing our Grenada.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try the sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
Welcome back, folks. And as usual on Mek We Chat, the discussions continue even when we are not on air. So we continue where we left off, looking at the situation in Dominica with the militarizing of the police force and militarizing and weaponizing of the police force, which is being turned against the people. You know, we had a similar situation in Grenada and it didn't end so good, you know.
I see the same thing happening in Jamaica right now.
With the arming, but Jamaica has an army.
Yes, but if you're not careful, the police are going to be phased out.
And the army just takes over. My goodness. But tell us a little bit more about that, Janet. What is happening there? Because a lot of time when you hear the reports, if you don't talk to people on the ground in Jamaica, the picture you get is just that crime is out of control and
crime is out of control. That picture is correct.
Crime has been out of control since the 80s.
Well, it's worse now than then.
Right.
Nobody seems to be able to find the right solution outside of state of emergency.
But there is
after you do a state of emergency the first time, and it has that impact. If you go back and you continue to do it too often, the people get used to it. They don't fear it any longer. And that is what is happening with us here in Jamaica.
But the problem is crime, and speaking specifically to the crime in Jamaica. There is no quick fix and no overnight fix for it.
No.
And
there is no quick fix.
And it is being, and it has been, and it is a political problem.
We all have to come together as a nation.
Right.
All parties must come together. It can't be just the ruling party. Opposition and ruling party has to come together.
Yes, and
however,
that is why
I do not expect the opposition to solve the crime problem when they are in opposition. Okay?
But the current opposition in Jamaica formed the government for 20 consecutive years, and they didn't solve the crime problem. So now that they're in opposition, they absolutely will not be able to solve it in opposition.
I doubt it.
It's a political.
I think we need some experts from outside.
And not to come in with a quick fix, to systematically study the problem and find out how it can be solved, because it's political and it's social. And we see
it is social more than anything else.
And in Jamaica, you can clearly see that the people who are committing the crimes are being financed by people with money. Because no 20-year-old who don't have a job cannot find money to buy a gun, which is probably worth $3 or $4 million. You don't have the money. So somebody is financing it.
Of course, it is being financed by big dollars. But one of the biggest issues that we face is the fact that these guns are coming in. And we have not been able to cauterize that. So the guns are coming in. And where are they coming from?
It's not that we haven't been able to. We turn a blind eye to it.
No, then if we turn a blind eye, we're not able to cauterize.
You see,
whether we turn a blind eye or we look.
But Janet,
the guns are coming in and they're continuing to kill our people. We're not managing the situation.
Where are the guns coming from? Where are the guns coming from?
A lot of the guns are coming from the United States.
Yes.
There was a time when we said they were coming from Haiti.
No.
But no, Haiti does not have those types of brand new looking guns that we're finding at our wards.
Right. You see,
and ocean too open too.
And Janet, that what you have said there crystallizes the problem, because no little 20-year-old boy on the street does not have the connections to bring in the guns through the walls. It's the big dogs.
You gotta go after the big dogs.
Connection. It's the big dogs who are doing it. Yeah. They are the ones who are financing the crime in Jamaica.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you have to follow the money.
Exactly so. So you have a state of emergency. You lock up all of the foot soldiers, and all they do is go and recruit another set of foot soldiers, because that cannot solve the problem until Jamaica gets serious about dealing with the issue of crime and stop behaving like it's something where you can just.
I don't know. The government seems like it's getting more serious now, though, to be honest with you. As much as I was thinking that this latest round of state of emergency may not work, I see where it is working more than it's not working.
Right.
I see social intervention coming in. And that seriousness about wanting to see a difference, I'm seeing a lot of that right now.
Good.
In the 3 parishes that we have the state of emergency in.
Right.
In the western end of the island, that is, because it's not just there's Zozo in Denham Town and those other areas, but the state of emergency is in St. James, Hanover, and Westmont.
And let me tell you something before we go back to Dominica and wrap up on Dominica. If the social intervention, and I love the social intervention, because if you can get these young boys, the majority of these young boys, to stop firing the guns for these big wigs, crime will be reduced dramatically. Because guess what? These big wigs not going out there to fire the guns themselves.
Well, Miss sorry, Beverly, they're not going to fire it, but let me tell you something. Our young people, all them interested in quick money.
Right, and that's why I talk about the social intervention and the social
intervention not give them quick money.
No, and it's not going to work overnight either. It's a painful, painstaking process. It's not going to work overnight. But it's what is necessary in dealing with it from this angle. And from the other angle, we just have to get serious about dealing with the bigwigs. And some of the very people who are supposed to be dealing with the crime problem are involved in it. And that creates a bigger problem.
Yeah.
So there's no easy fix, but the social intervention is necessary, because if we can get the young men unhooked from the guns, just like we get them unhooked from the drugs. If we get them unhooked, then we're on the road to solving the problem. It ain't going to be easy, because the money is the magnet.
Yeah.
And if they can pick up a easy $50,000 to go there and shoot somebody, they will do it.
That's true.
But you
know, a life don't value nothing to them, no.
Exactly.
The first
Welcome, Dwyer. Glad to have you.
Thank you very much. Sorry to be late. I was at a meeting. I do apologize for being late.
Okay, but we're glad you made it.
Thank
we
you.
were looking at the situation in Dominica, where it seems like an entire army was let loose on the electoral reform meeting, and we're just going to be wrapping up on that before we move on to the next issue.
Well, I wouldn't want to hold back the conversation. Suffice it to say that governments in these islands have tended to become very muscular and in trying to make a point to people, you know. They like to bring out the uniforms with the heavy metal to make their point. It's almost intimidation. And it needs to stop.
And that is the $1,000,000 question, because it's we the citizens who have to stop it.
Yeah, well, it begins with us, you know.
Mm-hmm. But and a first step in that process has to be that we have to admit that we really have a problem. I'm not sure in the country that we've agreed that we have the kinds of problems Janet was talking about in terms of the youth and the violence and the drugs. And we, even here in Dominica, I believe we're only now beginning to get to the point where we actually agree that actually our constitution and our laws and by extension our electoral process is in danger. There's still people who don't believe that it is in danger, and hence it requires no fixing. But the first rule of fixing anything is clearly to identify that you do have a problem. And the second rule, an important one in this case, is to admit that we have something to do with creating that problem. And as Dwyer just intimated, it is we who have something to do about finding and implementing a solution. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, the young people phenomenon, I'm afraid that because we take often such a silo kind of approach to things, but the young people issue is integral to the collapse of the electoral processes, because you have a majority of very young voters. Those people, a lot of them are unemployed, and they are fair game for anybody who presents themselves and presents money or things to those young people. And I'm afraid that what is happening is that our young people, and this is Dominica now, back to Dominica, a lot of our young folks are on the receiving end of many thousands of dollars on a daily basis now. This is part of the campaign being executed by the operatives of the ruling party. They have apparently a bottomless pit of money. And it is not unusual to find a young man unemployed with $5,000 in his hand. What? And he is now expected to go out there and present himself, wear a red shirt, paint his bike red, etc., and fly a red flag. Mm-hmm. And so, in other words, instead of that social intervention that you're referring to, Bev, what we're getting is that the young people are becoming a part of the toolkit of the top dogs who want to stay in office, stay in power. And that means the continued and deepening unraveling of a sense of purpose, of any modicum of discipline among the young folks, which is what they're going to be needing if they are to become functioning members of a, society. And
I have a question, Bill. You said that the people are bright. Is it that these persons, these young people, their education, academically, they're unable to think for themselves?
No, they have thought it through, and they've seen that this is not a society that has placed their needs and their interests as a priority. These are kids who have been to high school. They have several GCEs, several CXEs. Some of them have been to the state college and graduated, and for years they have no job.
Okay.
Because there's no economy, to absorb them. And the only way they get cash nowadays is to go to a politician, as Marley would remind us, never let a politician do you a favor. Well, politicians are doing favors. Every Wednesday, the prime minister of the country has what he calls a red clinic, where hundreds of people present themselves to him, and after 1 or 2 minutes of discussion, will walk out of that prime minister's office with thousands of hard cash dollars. And this has been going on for nigh on 7 years. So there are people in this country who now understand that they don't have to work to get their bills paid. All they have to do is present themselves, wear something. You see, you're wearing red. You're perfectly ready
Janet, to present the minister and win an immediate and walk out with thousands of dollars. Wear something red. Or carry a baby and say your child is sick and you need money to go to the hospital. I don't have the money. And when you go downstairs, give your baby to another lady who needs a baby to go upstairs. And she will use that same baby to get money. Do you understand what I'm talking about? The unraveling of the society. And all in the name of a group of top dogs who want to stay top dogs if they have to mash up the Constitution, mash up the law. And they have the operatives. They have lawyers, mostly lawyers. No, present company accepted. Mostly lawyers who have assembled themselves around those people. In fact, on the Electoral Commission, the Prime Minister, the ruling party, has 3 lawyers. And all of them are also selling Dominican passports to people in the Middle East. So, you understand what I'm talking about here? No. What I'm talking about here is a cabal that has found a way to sell off Dominica and to earn millions of dollars while keeping the rest of the population, in fact, making the rest of the population poorer, so they have to depend on the top dog. And that is why it's so important to us to break that cycle. And this election coming up is the do or die election.
Yeah, that's true. And this discussion takes us right into the next clip that we have. I hope all the suspects would have looked at it today, because we know we won't see it when George is playing it for the audience. And that is another political situation in St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Yeah.
I can wash, I can cook, and I can clean. I need a job. Just like how let's go wrong what the ULP all about. I think I should have a job there in a black and white team. I'm a full supporter of the ULP. My issue is, I am a ULP worker. I need a work too. I see other people who's not supporting the ULP getting work, and it's unfair to us. I don't mind they get work, but others need work also.
Do you think political support is important regarding who gets work?
Yes, it's very important.
Why is it important?
Yeah, because NDP workers working and we're not working here, ULP supporter.
Can I ask what's your name?
Okay. My name is Yvonne Reed from Buckomet Bay.
I am a resident who living right here. I was here from beginning to end. I walk there to clean there. I am an NDP supporter. I'm not expect to get a work from there because I'm an NDP supporter. But what I see going on here with the supporter for Labour, you can give one body work and the rest ain't have any.
So are you saying that because you're NDP supporter, you don't expect to get a job?
No, not one like me.
Why is that important?
No. After the Labour people ain't get a work there, I will not get one either because I'm an NDP supporter.
So you say you used to work at the clinic?
I work there from beginning to clean it when they finish the building.
But then you say you're NDP supporter, you don't expect to get a job, but you got a job to clean.
That is when the building was to hand over to government. But I will not get a work right now.
Were you the only person who worked to clean?
3 of us.
Okay. Do you know about the politics of the other people?
3 of us was NDP.
Okay.
Thank you.
And when you got the job, did anybody ask you about your politics?
No.
No,
but
when you
people
got the
comment
job
about it, say we are NDP and we ain't supposed to work there to clean.
People made that comment?
Yes.
So who gave you the job to clean?
Balcom. It's Balcom the man name? Yeah. Franco.
So the contractor?
Yes.
What is the issue here? Why are you protesting?
I'm protesting because there's a lot of young people in the area who are not working and really need a work.
And how is the clinic going to help in that regard?
Well, the clinic going to open. Nobody from Buckomet working there.
What kind of job do you think people from Buckomet can do there?
They can do a lot of things. There are secondary school children, graduates. There are lots of children out there who can't get a work.
Okay. Can I ask you what's your name?
My name is Dylan.
Are you from Buckomet also?
Yes, please. I don't need a work, but I need people in the community to get a work.
Are you guys happy that the clinic was built here?
Yeah, we're glad for God said, at least. We need work. There are plenty young men on the road. Need work. Need work. Them a complain that them a smoke, take them off the road and give them a work.
That the work has been done there.
So you say they need a gardener?
Of course, because look at the yard, you need somebody to sustain it, clean it every day.
I am a gardener, I have my swiping machine. I am a gardener, I used to work with nature care for how much years. I am on my own now. Right now, I'm complaining about the grass being overgrown, and they giving me no work. Right now, I am suffering from a job, and I want a protesting for the gardening to be done by someone in the community.
You think you can do it?
Yes, I can afford to do it because I have my own machine and my own business going on as a gardener.
Yeah, because he have no job, that's why he drink rum. If he have a job, he will not go around rum and drinking rum. He have nothing else to do more than drinking rum. So if he gets the job there, he will not drink no more rum. Yes, when he get the job, he will not. Right, you'll be okay when you get the job.
Vote who you want to vote. Me don't want nobody tell me who to vote. Me a Labour man from since 1994, and me not stop vote for Labour.
No, leave that.
Yeah, me say. So all me tell me friend them, keep your opinion to yourself. You boss, just say what you have to say. And I tell nobody, you hear me tell you? We not depend politics, I work for the villagers. You boss, and we good.
He was telling us we have 5 seconds.
Yeah, we're back.
Okay, right. Now, that piece which was run is showed some protesters in St. Vincent and the Grenadines for the 2 major political parties. No, I laughed because I really had to look at that thing quite a few times before I actually slap myself and say, yes, Beverly, what you're looking at is real. Mm-hmm. That is what you're seeing and that is what you're hearing. The government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, in particular the Prime Minister, has gone around to communities opening these clinics, what you call these polyclinics, these smart clinics. I think so far he has opened 3. They go and have a big ceremony and open them today and they close tomorrow because the clinics are not equipped to do anything. They just open it to make a big show because St. Vincent and the Grenadines has an election coming up as well. Yes. Now, this particular community, Bucament, where the protest that we saw, that is the community which had one of these bubble projects, the Bucament Bay Resort, where some person come in and tell some lie, scam some people, and promise a resort which was never built, and left the community. So with the opening of the clinic there, people are angry because they need jobs. But here they come out to protest, and it's not just that we're protesting for jobs. Today, we're protesting because we support the ULP, which is the party which now forms the government. We support the ULP because we're supposed to get jobs. So we are supposed to get jobs because we support the ULP. And this other person said, well, I am out here protesting too, but I know I'm not getting a job because I support the NDP, which is the main opposition party. I support the NDP, so I know I will not get a job. But I'm out here protesting because people need to get jobs. And this is the kind of ridiculousness that politics has reduced people to. So we're no longer Grenadians and Jamaicans and Dominicans and Kitishans. We're now ULP and NDP and WP, PIS and whatever, NNP, PNP, JLP. No longer. Yeah. We have become tribes. That's exactly it. Now, when I listen to the utterances of those people in that clip, how it's just a normal thing. It's as normal as you getting up and having a glass of water. Oh, I don't expect to get no job because I'm an NDP supporter. I expect to get a job because I'm a ULP supporter. You know, this is in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and I didn't hear one person say I'm a Vincentian, I'm a ULP, or I'm a NDP. This is so sick, it turned my stomach. And
people are brainwashed.
People are totally brainwashed by politics. Totally
and people are easily led. Our leaders are great demagogues. You know?
Yes.
By the time they finish with these people, they stop thinking for themselves.
They have stopped thinking for themselves.
Yeah.
And that is why they are out there in St. Vincent and the Grenadines in particular. The Prime Minister of the country, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, and his family, they own all of the major businesses in that country, which is struggling. The Prime Minister, of course, he sits in this Prime Minister seat, he's the top dog. His son is the Minister of Finance. His son's wife is the head of the, whatever you call it in your country, the Financial Intelligence Unit. She's the head of that. His other daughter represents St. Vincent in the UN. His wife controls the restaurant at the airport. His other son controls the real estate in the country.
The family business.
You see?
Oh my God.
They control, that family controls his brother-in-law controls all the works in the country, in the Ministry of Works. So every piece of road work, every piece of road to fix is in brother-in-law. He has a cousin, which is also in control of one of those ministries that just, you have to go through them to get things done.
When did the Caribbean people become so docile?
Stupid. Docile, so stupid.
I mean, let me ask a question. Is how much people live in St. Vincent and the Grenadines? What's the population?
About 110,000 people. You see?
And them allow one family to capture the country because that's a...
Yes.
That's and communism to me.
And all of those people who out here protesting is some little low-paying jobs they're protesting for. Yeah, because one of them who was there, what he says, he said the grass growing up there, he have his equipment and they wouldn't even hire him to cut the grass. Because of course, he's an NDP, so they're not giving him the ULP grass to cut.
Beverley, can I say something here?
Absolutely.
A couple of things stand out to me from this clip. One is particularly the lady who is the NDP supporter. She doesn't expect to get work.
No.
Now that's a very poignant thing, in that if you do not support the party in power, you live in despair. Let me repeat that because there was a song there. If you do not support the party in power, you live in despair, without hope. If half or roughly half of the population of a country is made to live in despair, then the country is guaranteed to fail. That's number one. Number two, the same lady who says, I am an NDP supporter, I don't expect to get work. But Lord, man, give me at least, and I'm paraphrasing her, at least give your own supporters some work.
Yes.
That speaks to me here to a simpatico, a compassion that hopefully exists at the grassroots level, which perhaps activists like ourselves ought to tap into to get these people at the grassroots level to understand that the party and the party machineries are gangster enterprises that are not designed or intended to bring sustainable benefit and empowerment and dignity to the masses of the people. Indeed, their remit is quite to the contrary. And this simpatico that I sense in this lady is something that gave me some encouragement and inspiration that we activists need to try to target. And we have to understand that the record will show thus far that to a large extent, or perhaps for the greater part, neither group is better than the other.
Exactly.
I went to an event today marking the opening of a new church. And the pastor, there were politicians on both sides. And he said, he's a very bold and brazen man, and I love him for that. He said, none all you're better than none. All of you are the same. And if you all want us to respect you all will have to be better than how you all are. So from this very sad situation in St. Vincent, which, let's face it, Afi, that can happen in Dominica.
It is happening.
It can happen in Jamaica.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, I remember when I was Minister of National Security some years ago, we had a Ministers of National Security meeting. And my Jamaican counterpart told me, I think he said there were 150 gangs, known gangs in Jamaica, most of which were aligned with one political party or the other. So the social intervention that you all were talking about before my late arrival, this first target for social intervention needs to be the leadership. Our leaders need social intervention. It may involve a little time behind bars. But intervention is needed because, as far as they're concerned, divisiveness, deceit, degradation, and undereducating are the order of the day. Those are the ingredients they use when they're cooking the food for us to eat. This is our Kool-Aid that we get from them.
Thank you.
So what those poor women were saying at Buckerman, or whatever you call the place, what they were saying a couple of days ago is a microcosm of a very sick phenomenon that exists in Caribbean society. But the simpatico, to repeat the point, the simpatico seems to be there. When the chips come down, it looks like they're still looking out for each other. At least, man, she vote for you. Give you a job now, man.
Exactly.
Although that is not the right reason for somebody to get a job.
But
at least there is simpatico, and I think we should work on it.
Yeah. How many times have we said it in this forum that we need to get rid of political parties? We absolutely need to get rid of them.
What are we gonna have? Tell me.
No, you see, there can be systems in place where people go up to be elected outside of political parties. So you don't have to have a party that puts forward candidates. Dismantle the party. And if Janet wants to become a member of parliament, let her stand up in Montego Bay and say, I'd like to represent you. You're not representing any party. This is you. This is what you bring to the table. This is how you believe you can make a difference in the community. But when you have this party machinery, which is set up just the way Dwyer described it a while ago, which is set up in that way, and then it becomes so divisive in the country. People, we no longer consider ourselves citizens. You know, we are peas.
And all of them are peanut them for chewing?
Most of them. Most of them. We have one in Grenada, which is the National Democratic Congress. That one is a seed.
You see the thing, one of the things, Beverly, and sisters and brother Afi, that is a concern with political parties. Although I am not sure that I'm in 100% agreement with Beverley. I find political parties in very real terms more negative than positive. But when you are part of the party line and you have to toe the party line, you have to lie and sin your soul. Look at what the Republicans are doing in America.
True.
And I am not going to tell no lie for nobody. I'm not going to compromise my integrity simply because I want to say I belong to a party. To hell with the party.
True.
To hell with the
He might have
party.
to say the same thing to his party because he's representing, I believe, a Jamaica Labour Party known activist. He's a lawyer, and he had to tell them that his law firm is not a PNP law firm.
Exactly.
Yes,
And
man.
that
But
is
you
why
know,
I tell
Janet, Janet, you asked a really important question. If not political parties, what?
What?
But if you go back far enough, there was a time when that same simpatico ingredient that Dwyer has been mentioning was the driver for activity and activism at the ground level throughout our region.
Absolutely.
Women got together to do things, whether it be to organize the church. Men got together to do things, whether it be to organize to build roads together, to assist each other in their various enterprises on the farms or in the small factories and so forth. In other words, we did have institutions. And those institutions gave rise to a certain kind of tenor of leadership, a certain level of expertise, and that bubbled to the top, so that when you went to a village community and you sought a view, the villagers would tell you, go by Mr. So-and-so, go by Ma so-and-so, go by so, because they knew who their leaders were. Because those leaders had earned their stripes by actually engaging with the community in doing what needed to be done. That's the beginning of the process. The political party came in and superimposed itself on that situation. Instead of drawing on it, instead of working with that, instead of fertilizing it, nurturing it, and actually graduating people from local level to parish level to national level leadership, that's the option. That's the alternative. You used to have parish councils in Jamaica. I know, I used to work in Jamaica. So I know about how strong some of your deep rural parish councils were, precisely because they were far away from the capital. And the politicians spent less time interfering with them.
Not the case anymore.
Not the case anymore, I understand. But the point is, the principle of leadership from the ground up, allowing people a chance to make their own mistakes. Other than that, you're always going to end up working on somebody else's plantation. That's what we have inherited from the actions of our political and economic elite.
And the other thing which I find very dangerous about political parties is that they are an organ which is not a part of the state. They have their own funding, they have their own internal organization, which is not subject to the machinery of the state. So you have the political party out there raising its own funds. Nobody knows where the money is coming from. Nobody knows where it goes. Nobody knows. There is no law.
So there is lack of accountability.
There is no accountability. It's not subject to any law. And this is the animal that you hand over the state to and say it's yours.
Because each party is waiting for its opportunity to feed at the trough of the public purse.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they are undemocratic by nature.
Yes.
And then we unrealistically expect to live in a democracy that is administered by a group of people who are fundamentally undemocratic. We're living a lie, we're fooling ourselves.
And that
what
is why I
democracy
say,
mean again? Of the people, by the people, for the
and
people.
for the people.
Yeah.
And that is why I say what I talked about tonight with how people could be elected, that is just one deposit. There are many options to a system of governance.
It's
that
too
does
ingrained.
not
You
include-
know what? This is
No.
what I mean.
Slavery was also
Don't be
ingrained.
so cynical, man. You're gonna have to.
Listen,
Don't be so cynical.
I'm a realist.
Janet,
I'm one too.
Janet, slavery was a system that was ingrained. Nobody never knew slavery would end.
The end?
No. Listen, that type
But
of
you know,
slavery.
I like
she has
you.
a good, yeah. She has
That's
a
a
good
very-
point.
I don't agree with you though.
Well, probably what changed was the plantation.
The plantation changed and the masters changed, but slavery continue.
But the game remains the same.
But the game remains the same. But that system, so let's talk about
to everything else. From agricultural plantation, you have tourism plantations, you have industry.
Right. So the system.
That's what you end up having. That's the point that Dwyer is making. It's the absence of a true democratic, bloodstream.
Mm-hmm.
What you get?
Well, guess why? Guess why it's not in the bloodstream? Because a 5-year-old is taken to a political meeting, right? And that 5-year-old immediately thinks that he or she is a Jamaica Labour Party supporter or a People's National Party supporter.
Janet, I'll tell you
I'm
something.
already brainwashed.
I'll tell you something worse than that.
Mm-hmm.
In Dominica, a few weeks ago, they had a group of children. The oldest must have been about 8 years old, right, Ati?
Yes,
a group of children singing a political song, singing about some candidate that they will be supporting till they die. Children.
That candidate, by the way, is the wife of the Prime
Minister.
Oh my God.
And they had these.
The Prime Minister is in Parliament as well?
Not yet, but she gets in there. And they have these children. And when I saw this thing, I said, imagine you have parents who allow their children to become that because of a political party that they support. Young children, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, singing. This is we candidate, this is the leader, and we'll support her till we die, and something like that.
Oh my God.
Children.
Lord of mercy.
So when you talk about the brainwash,
starting pretty early.
Yes.
But see the political dynasty that we're building across the region.
Yes.
I didn't realize it was so bad in St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Yes.
I didn't. I mean, I am at a loss, and I know, and I hope I don't sound stupid, but it's good that I'm part of this team. Otherwise, I probably would not have known that it was so bad.
And I tell you something?
Yes.
It's worse.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as bad as you think. It's worse. We need a 24-hour show to really get to the bottom of it. And let me tell you something about brainwashing. The answer has to come from the people.
Mm-hmm.
It really has to be a bottom-up thing, stimulated and agitated by activists like ourselves, if I may say so myself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Our people are not trained to think. They are afraid of reasoning and logic. They are afraid of mathematics. The biggest enemy, one of the biggest enemies to growth in Caribbean, Ralph Gonzalez likes to use the word civilization, is that little contraption called the calculator. Nobody knows to add and multiply. Mathematics is at the very corner, at the very core of logic and reasoning. So until we get to a point where we understand, as we say here in St. Kitts, how barley really grow, we will continue to be brainwashed But while our brains are washed, our pockets remain dry.
Yeah.
And somebody pocket washed with money.
Oh, yes.
That's the problem right there. We are on, listen, Rodney's book, Walter Rodney's book, must be compulsory reading for everybody in the Caribbean. How Europe underdeveloped Africa. Now, there needs to be a second book written by Beverley Sinclair.
Yeah.
Entitled, How Post-Independent Caribbean Leaders Underdevelop Their People.
Yeah, that's true. They
That
don't
book needs to
want
be
to
written.
educate their people.
They don't want you educated.
No,
I tell you,
they don't want to see those people educated.
That's the problem. Aye.
I'm a few steps ahead of you with that, you know. I start writing it already.
Thank you, darling. Save me 5 copies.
Yeah.
Save
It's
me
in the
5
making.
copies.
But I
It's
think that,
making.
but if she's writing it, though, I think we should all get that chapter in it.
But of course. More than a chapter.
I love
Beverly,
it.
Beverly,
Yes.
where you
Yes.
find her? Where you find that woman?
Is the first time in meeting me?
I just love you, man.
Oh, I love you too.
You're a real radical, man.
I am.
I love that.
Well, Dwyer, I do not associate with people who don't have brain, you know.
I hear you. I hear you.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I have done quite a bit of that in my life. I've associated with a number of politicians.
Well, it's because you have a brain, that's why you disassociate.
I discovered my brain, that's why I left.
That's right.
And when I discovered it, I was afraid to lose it, so I left quick.
You know?
Most of them brain in the pocket, man.
Oh my God.
Oh, it's sad.
Yeah.
But you know, while they continue to rape the region, we're going to have to start recruiting some activists.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Isn't that what we're doing?
We alone can't do it. Huh?
Is that not what we're doing here?
No, well, you see, I must be honest with you. I haven't been on the show for a long time, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I'm a newcomer.
I'm late.
I'm a newcomer.
Pardon me?
I'm a newcomer. I just reached.
Oh, you just reached. Oh, okay. All right. Well, listen to me, no, me like your mind. Talk about critical thinking and the fact that we don't learn mathematics, and as a result, we're at a disadvantage.
Of course.
Yeah.
You're going to tell me we speak English, which is next to Mandarin, I think even now still the most widely spoken language in the world.
Mm-hmm.
We are in the Eastern time zone, United States Eastern time zone.
Mm-hmm.
We are in the internet age, where a lot of intelligence-driven industry can take place in our country, economic activity, and we don't have the skill sets to do it. When we have a big project, they say they have to bring in carpenters and masons and plumbers
from
and
China.
vendors from China. Now, isn't that a condemnation of ourselves and our leaders for not having prepared our people? And indeed, so we are in a position of advantage which has been squandered in a combination of bad governance and the people in a kind of torpor.
True.
In a kind of torpor. Once you could go see Buju Banton, or go and see the latest movie, or get the latest weave, or the latest fingernail thing, or you in the latest whatever or whatever, and you're drinking your Absolute and something, and you're in a club, and you could go on Instagram, you believe that that's the main attraction.
Yeah.
But in fact, that's the distraction.
No values, no values.
Nothing. We just like rudderless ships on the ocean.
And guess what happened too? Our people have reached the stage now where they too believe that the people who are being brought in to do the work that they should be doing can be justified because they themselves can't do it. Can you imagine? They themselves have reached a stage in their lives where they have lost faith in themselves. Because they have been told this over and over again. Now it becomes gospel for them.
And
that state that we're in. I feel sorry for us.
It brings me back to the lady in St. Vincent, the NDP supporter.
That's right.
Who has articulated her despair. And if she has been living in despair for as long as Ralph has been Prime Minister, and presuming that we only have one life to live, this lady has encountered misery for the last 15, 17 years. What a way for somebody to live in a beautiful little country. That's nowhere for us to live.
We're going to take our last break. And when we come back, we are going to look at some CCJ issues.
Bev.
Yes, George.
Before we go to the break here, I'm seeing a couple of comments that I really want you guys to take on. Somebody named Peter Belfon has posted here, and I quote, "Caribbean politics make such a mockery of democracy that the talk shows like these are like a wounded tiger licking its wounds." And then he goes on to say in another comment, "Where is the judicial system and its ability to dispense justice independently?" Want to take on that, you guys?
Well, a wounded tiger is not dead, you know. You lick the wounds and you get up and you fight another day.
Well, I think a wounded tiger is a very dangerous animal.
Very dangerous animal as well.
Kipling Francis in New York says, "The media is doing more damage than the politicians, editing the news for ratings. There is not much truth anymore. It all boils down to who you like and who you hate. Not many people care about the rest of the story."
True.
Some truth in that.
Some truth in that.
Yep.
And Peter Belfon comes... Pardon me?
Sorry, George. I was just responding that the media is an issue we have to give a whole program to.
A series of programs. Peter Belfon comes back here and says, "Squandered, squeezed, and manipulated."
Yep.
What?
Squandered, squeezed, and manipulated.
Yeah.
All right, Miss Beverly, you want to take a break? Let me take a break and we'll come on back after this.
My name is Jennifer James, and I've been making confectionaries for the past 7 years. Growing up as a little girl, I always wanted to make these little things. Fudge, sugar cake, tamarind ball, these little things. I read something actually, and it said that tamarind itself is very good because it eliminates fat from the liver. You get the mature tamarind and you crack it, you shell it out. I would add a little baking soda, some spices. I would leave it to rest probably for about 2 hours and then add my sugar and just start kneading. I usually knead it hard enough so that I can roll it. When I finish roll it, I will paste it with the actual white or brown sugar, and you have a nice tamarind ball. I have been providing food fair with tamarind ball about 6 years now. I started producing tamarind ball to sell for the school children. I thought I could advance somewhere. So I went to food fair and I asked one of the salespersons there if they would be interested in selling my tamarind ball. And she told me yes. She told me to bring 20 packets to start with. It was really a joy for me because I wanted to extend on my little business. My name is Jennifer James, and I work with the food fair to provide you with tamarind balls.
Grenadian General Insurance Company, strength and stability. Grenadian General Insurance Company, tell your friends, tell your family. We cover householders comprehensive, motor and even fire too. Contractors all risk burglary, public liability, professional indemnity, directors liability, and wait, we still have more. Come and find out more what you're waiting for.
We are located on Scott Street, St. George's. For more information, call 440-2434.
Tell everybody.
A natural disaster can change your life in minutes. Preparation is the best protection for your family and business. Prepare now. Create a disaster plan and make sure everyone knows what to do. Store water, non-perishable food, and medication. Remember basic emergency supplies such as batteries and flashlights. Trim overhanging trees. If trees near power lines are unsafe to trim, call GRENADA at 237 for assistance or advice. Install surge protectors to safeguard your electrical devices against outages and intermittent surges. For more information, visit grenlec.com.
Grenlec, energizing our Grenada.
All right, for those of you who are now with us at the top of the night, the top of the program tonight, just let me reintroduce the usual suspects tonight. We'll start at the top left. There's, in New York, Margaret Francis. Wave Margaret and say hi. There I am in the middle, top row. On the right, top of the screen, Catherine Edwards, and she's out there in England. And then we go back to the left. Smiling face, braiding her hair, as always. Dressed like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer tonight is our friend out there in Jamaica, Janet Silva. Then, premier suspect tonight, Beverly, looking like little Pinky. And the guy who's always close to his kitchen, Mr. Atherton Martin. He was eating earlier on. He's finished, and you'll have to take it up with him. He didn't leave anything for you guys. And I've saved the best for last. There he is down at the bottom. This guy has an affinity for showing you his receding hairline. He's always got his head bent forward when he's talking, and therefore you cannot see those beautiful glasses. Mr. Dwyer Astaphan, and he's out there in Anguilla. Take it away, guys.
I am not in Anguilla, brother.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Excuse me. St. Kitts. Well,
and it's because of my respectful manner that I bow.
Dwyer, you're priceless. You're priceless. Okay, Bev.
Right. Now, last year, 2018, was a very exciting year in Grenada. You know, we had a referendum. It was last year, George? Or the year before? Seems like a long time ago.
It seems like a long time ago.
But I think it was last year when we had a mighty thrust from the from the government to have the population vote to change the constitution to get rid of the Privy Council as the final court of appeal and adopt the CCJ. Now, the CCJ is always a long story. It's hard to talk about the CCJ in a short story because most Caribbean countries, not all, contrary to what has been bandied about, not all Caribbean countries are members of the CCJ. But the CCJ has what you call two jurisdictions. An original jurisdiction that deals with interpretation of the Treaty of Chaguaramas, which is the treaty that binds Caribbean nations together as CARICOM, the Caribbean community. So within that treaty, there are certain rights laid down for CARICOM nationals to travel from country to country freely without any hindrance. You leave Jamaica, you come to Grenada, you're allowed to stay here 6 months without anyone asking you any questions. And that is how it is supposed to be within the community. That's why the skills certificate was introduced. So you could have a CARICOM skills certificate and go and live and work in another CARICOM country with your skills certificate without having to apply for a work permit or do any renewal or anything like that. So these things are contained within the Treaty of Chaguaramas. Now, one of the cases that went to the CCJ last year from Grenada was a case of a young man by the name of David Bain. The court has not yet ruled on this, but the arguments have been heard. Mr. Bain went to Trinidad and Tobago purportedly to attend a wedding of a relative, and he was denied entry. Now, the story that came out is that Mr. Bain was born in Grenada, but he was traveling with a US passport. And based on some things which turned up when he showed up at the border, his involvement with narcotics, he was arrested on some narcotics charges, several narcotics charges. And those of us who understand how the travel system works nowadays, once you swipe your passport, all your life story come up before the immigration officer. So even when they ask you questions, they already have the information there on their computer. They're just asking you to see how you're gonna behave. So he turned up with his US passport and immigration denied him entry. He proceeded to invoke his rights under the Treaty of Chaguaramas and produce his Grenada driving license and voter ID to declare that he's a Grenadian, a CARICOM national, and therefore he's entitled to free entry. He was denied. They kept him overnight, sent him back to Grenada, never allowed him into the country. He decided to take the matter to the CCJ. Now, the arguments which have been heard and which we should think about is whether or not a driving license, which would have your nationality on it, is sufficient proof of your nationality to invoke the Treaty of Chaguaramas. That's the question. The lawyer for Mr. Bain is trying to say that it is. The CARICOM, which was represented in the case, and Trinidad say it is not, because the treaty has embedded in it laws that relate to your passport, whether or your machine readable passport, and there is no way a driving license can substitute for a passport, because you cannot get the information from a driving license that you can get from a passport. So these are the two major arguments that have been put forward, and I wanted to raise it here tonight because travel within CARICOM is still an issue. Freedom of movement. The other case that Grenada brought before the CCJ was also a freedom of movement issue, but this one was lost, and if we get to discuss it, we could look at it. Now, Dwyer, you are the legal mind here tonight. What do you think of this scenario as far as the Treaty of Chaguaramas is concerned and freedom of movement, and whether or not any other document besides your passport should be accepted by immigration officers as proof of your nationality to the extent where you can invoke your rights under the treaty?
Well, the first thing, Beverly, is to ask a question. And just for the sake of argument, I'm asking the question. He presented his Grenada driver's license.
Yes.
Is it possible that he might have renounced his Grenada citizenship after that license had been issued to him.
And
because
that's one of the questions raised.
Because if that took place, then the immigration officials, I don't know if they would have the information in their system to suggest that. If they are persuaded that he's a Grenadian citizen, unless there is suspicion in terms of any national defense, public interest, public safety considerations, then he should be allowed entry. But we must remember, in fact, the case you sent for us today to look at, I think it was some people going through Barbados, was it?
Yeah.
The other case?
Uh-huh.
With the family?
Yeah, with the family.
Okay.
And what the CCJ ruled was that he's a Grenadian citizen, notwithstanding the treaty, notwithstanding the treaty, is nothing wrong at all with immigration officials if they have good grounds to suspect that somebody it is not in the best interest of Barbados, whether for criminal purposes or other purposes. So they can do the security checks on anybody. They can do the security check. For example, you're a US citizen. You're just landing at Kennedy Airport from Montego Bay. The police, the immigration will pull you aside and search you, and you're a US citizen. So I don't think the process of searching, now this can't be done preponderously, it can't be done excessively, but the process of searching, reasonable searching, and searching in reasonable circumstances, that authority can never be taken away from the entry point security agencies of a country, because when that happens, security breaks down completely. And I think the rationale for the decision of the CCJ in this case with the family going into Barbados is exactly that. The Treaty of Chaguaramas does not prevent and should not and really could not prevent immigration, customs, police officials who have reasonable grounds to want to do a search to do so. Now, the persons may say, well, they did cavity searches on us and they were excessive and so. Those are evidentiary matters. Those are evidentiary matters, which frankly, I don't believe would go too very far. So in this particular case, based on the very little that I have, and all that I have is what I got from you, Beverly, I don't see anything wrong with the decision that the CCJ took. Second point, although you are allowed in for 6 months, if I leave here today and land at Palisadoes Airport, whatever they call it now, in Kingston, Norman Manley Airport, and I tell them, I come in here for 6 months. They say, who you staying with? I say, I'm staying with Beverley Sinclair. Where she live? She live 15 Hope Road, Kingston 11, whatever. How much money you have on you? I have $50. Is she going to support you? Yes. Do you have a document that says so? How are you going to live? How can you convince us that you will not become a public charge? All of these are reasonable questions for the entry point officials to ask somebody coming in. And that is not in any breach of any of the provisions of the treaty. Don't get me wrong. I'm all for the treaty, and I'm all for Caribbean integration. But we have to remember that people can't go into a country and become a public charge on the country, number one. They can't go into a country and become a threat to public safety or public order, number two. Somebody has to make the decisions on those issues. If you make the right decision and you're challenged, the challenger loses. If you make the wrong decision and you're challenged, the challenger wins. That is what makes life go on. But in this particular case that you presented to us, I don't see anything at all wrong with what the CCJ did.
And that's the case with the family.
Yes, the case with the family.
Right.
Yeah. I have a question. I was wondering about in the case, in the Trinidad case. Did you say that he landed with a U.S. passport?
Yes, he did.
So that means, and don't they fill out an immigration card?
Yes.
Yes.
And on that immigration card, you're supposed to declare your citizenship. And normally, the citizenship you declare on that card corresponds with the passport you're landing on.
Usually. But.
Or you can put both. You can put both.
You can?
If you have dual citizenship.
Does
CARICOM
recognize dual citizenship? The United States does.
Yes. No.
I'm asking.
In fact, the United States does recognize dual citizenship. In fact, it does.
It's kind of tricky.
Yeah, but it does.
It's tricky.
It's tricky, but they don't deny you if you have dual citizenship. You want me to give you an example?
No, I know. I'm fully aware of one case that actually there was that one exception case that he took to the court here. There was an Israeli case and that was recognized. So I'm kind of like, that's why I said it's kind of tricky.
Every Israeli who's every United States citizen who is also an Israeli citizen is allowed dual citizenship.
But
that was that case.
And let me tell you why that means that everybody is entitled to dual nationality. Because the Supreme Court would never uphold dual nationality for one set of people and not the rest.
And
you might be surprised.
There are so many Caribbean people who have a U.S. passport and still have the Caribbean passport.
Of course, no, of course.
Oh, yeah, I mean, most Caribbean people I know do that. Yeah.
I mean, that's such a common thing in the Caribbean.
They turn a blind eye to it. The U.S. doesn't enforce that.
Yeah, that's not an issue anymore.
No, it's not an issue.
Right. So I am waiting to see how the court is going to rule in that one where he landed with an American passport, because the questions come up. Does traveling on an American passport aggravate your rights as a Caribbean citizen?
No.
It shouldn't.
Exactly.
But Beverly.
Yes.
How hard is it for the Trinidad immigration authorities to find out from the Grenada authorities if the gentleman is a Grenadian citizen?
Oh, Lord. Trinidad not going through that.
No, that was one of the questions raised, and the argument put forward is that that's a responsibility that ought not to be for the immigration officers.
Yeah,
because the onus is on the traveler to land with proper documentation.
If the traveler is telling him, I have my Grenada's voter's card, it's a national ID card. I do not have my Grenada passport. Please be so kind enough to send off an email to Grenada. They must have a database there. And just check me in the national security system and see if I'm a citizen of Grenada. I mean, come on, man.
Next question I'm asking. So, driver's license, you can travel in the Caribbean with a driver's license?
In the OACS. In the OACS. Within the OACS, you can. But that's not.
But he was not within the OACS.
No, he was not.
He was not using it as a travel document. He was using it to prove that he's a CARICOM national.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think we're out of time, George. George says we're out of time. We are up on 10 o'clock. I tell you, the discussions tonight have been rigorously stimulating for me.
So we didn't get to talk about the media having to pay for their IDs for the Buju.
Oh gosh.
Oh Lord.
Hey, Janet.
I was quite interested in hearing more about that.
Janet. Okay, I hear you loud and clear. Bev,
Yes.
first thing on the agenda for next week. Please, just so that we planned it that way, Janet, so that she could come back next week. How about that?
All right. Janet, clear your calendar for next week, Thursday. And when you come back, we'll tell you all about the media paying for accreditation to go and cover Buju Banton show.
So quickly, Bev, has Emerald said anything yet?
No.
Please, let us just sign off on a very high note tonight and leave that to the agenda for next week. I do hope you can join us, Janet, because I'd really like to discuss that issue as well.
All right, let us pull it off. Let us pull it off. Don't do it next week. For the following week.
Okay. All right. Janet says not next week, George.
Whenever, but Janet, please get your red shirt back here as soon as possible.
A red shirt?
And you, Mr. Astaphan.
Yes, sir.
Bring that receding hairline back here next week.
Yes, sir. Look. You see?
Try it.
And Atti's just so serious in that.
Atti's wondering, what next will I eat before I hit the sack tonight?
I know what it's going to be. It's going to be coconut ice cream.
Oh my goodness.
Actually, that's just not nice. That's really not nice, you know?
And we have some utterances from Ronald Sanders and David Jessup and some things about oil exploration in Guyana. Plenty things was on the menu, you know. We may want to look at them next week.
You can check it next week.
All right.
Problem.
Yes. And my friend Catherine, oh gosh, girl, you've been sitting there, nice pink lips and so quiet tonight, not a word uttered.
I was enjoying everything. I was giving Janet the chance to speak.
Catherine, I think you were there doing your personal work. That is why I'm going to participate.
I am just happy to have Catherine back tonight because her internet let her down last week.
Yeah, my laptop. Yeah, my friend came on Friday and sorted it out for me.
Oh, great.
I was having problems with my Wi-Fi and my laptop.
To close, just let me join Bev in saluting you guys. I mean, I don't know. I hope you realize how profound a lot of the stuff you guys said tonight was. You know, I hope that we remember the words that were uttered here for a very, very long time. Because until the rest of the Caribbean wakes up and sees what was revealed here, boy, we are up a creek without a paddle. I salute you, gentlemen, and I feel honored to be in your company tonight, having heard what I heard. Thanks a lot, pilgrims. Good night.
Peace and love.
And thank you all suspects. Have a great night. Have a wonderful weekend. Whatever you do, keep smiling and try to get somebody to think.
Think for yourself. Think for yourself. You remember the mantra?
Yes.
Think for yourself.
Think for yourself.
But think of others.
That's right.
Don't be greedy with it. Cut.